What's up, everyone?
Hey,
Jamie, how
everybody.
you doing?
Good. How about you, Matt? How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's a fine Wednesday afternoon, July 23rd at 11 a.m. Pacific. What are we talking about today?
Let me show you. I'm just going to remind you. Do you remember this? Do you remember this?
Yeah, vaguely. I was trying to forget it. That is
Yeah.
chicken scratch central right there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But we were talking about security last time. I remember I think we got up to obfuscation, security obfuscation, where we were talking about using private IP addresses or EIP, elastic IP addresses. We were talking about using AOBs and AGAs as another way of reducing your threat surface and security. So I think we were drawing over and over. I will erase that, but last conversation was pretty much revolving around security best practices and what we think are some of the better strategies, tools, different ways of setting up your architecture to strengthen that security, and what you can do from the you know infrastructure networking side. Even though I generally usually go into this whole diatribe of don't fix all of your security issues with the networking, because you should fix it starting right from where everyone interfaces the code and the website and all that. But you know how it goes.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah, well, I
yourself?
think
What
that's
do
a
you think?
pretty good recap of what we talked about last time. I don't think it was last week. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. But for
It
those
wasn't
of
last
you
week.
who are just joining us, welcome to the Routing Loop. I'm Matt Lewis. I'm a solution architect over here at AWS, and we've got James Wenzel, also a solution architect over here at AWS. We focus on all things networking. The Routing Loop was something that we created to really just talk about networking. We don't feel like networking gets enough love. I think we were both network engineers or equivalents in past lives, and so we've always got a good place for networking in our heart. So yeah, this is that platform, and so we are going to talk about security best practices today. This is part two.
Mhm.
I was
As
thinking
promised.
we could sketch some stuff out. I was also thinking we did talk about best practices, but a lot of things when you're a solution architect are a little hand wavy. And I always
Yeah.
tell folks who are thinking of becoming a solution architect, they say, "Hey, what's it like?" And I say, "Well, you get hand wave privileges because we don't manage operational deployments. We do proof of concepts. We help. Jamie and I are both in the networking services service team, so we build the next generation of services around networking for AWS. But in a lot of cases, we're not diving into deploying 1,000 applications in a particular region and figuring out what the operational deployment for that looks like, or the landing zones, or VPC sharing, or everything else. And so what you'll get from us is what I call hand wave privileges. And what that means is we'll say, "Hey, you can do it like this," and there you go, it'll just work. And you have to go and configure things. So I think the idea here was we want to talk about best practices, but I think what we tend to gravitate towards is the hand wave answer of you could do it like this. You could build an egress security, a centralized egress security VPC. You could deploy a firewall in every VPC. Um, Trying to anchor us, Jamie, you and I, anchor us and this conversation back to the best practices piece. One of the things maybe we can do is we can pick on security, talking about security and network security here, but we can pick on the security best practices for AWS white paper and public content. And I think let's take maybe 20 minutes, not necessarily right now, but let's take 20 minutes of our hour that we have here today and go and nitpick at some of the security best practices out there and see how they relate to networking. Um, that's what I want to do today. Anyway, I think that'd be a cool thing for folks to get out of this one.
I agree. I like that idea, and also just because of the fact too that it kind of drives the point home a little bit that not everything is the same, right? So if you were to go and secure down one portion of the network, but the other portion or another egress or exit point is not secured, is your network secured? Whereas if you do the same thing for, say, an application where there's only one way in and one way out, right? You go through the API or you go through the front. It's a different paradigm. So yeah, I think that is relevant to say, okay, if we're going to look at security best practices, look at some of these public documentation out there of how is recommended or we recommend securing down workloads. What's the difference between that and securing down a network?
Yeah, no, I think we have our security folks here at AWS. They're industry leading folks, but we're a little bit disconnected from the dedicated security folks in our networking place, just because they're different layers, right? You build the physical infrastructure, which AWS manages, then you've got that shared security, it's a shared security responsibility model, but I call it the shared responsibility model, where basically you stack things on top of the infrastructure AWS has deployed, and Jamie and I operate in that networking silo. And then you layer security on top of that. And then security actually is layered. You have layers of security on top of the network layer itself. And so I think we sometimes are a little isolated, but also don't ask me about RAM or IAM or certificate or those things.
I know some of those, depending, like if you're talking about, sharing network services or, IAM for like securing down Lattice, I can help. But yeah, just as a general thing. But it's funny, I wanted to just pull up this comment from Pete. What is best practice for you maybe it's not for me. That's a very good point too. When we're talking, every now and again, when we talk to customers, they tell us like, what's the best thing to do? And what we usually ask is, what are you trying to do? What is your business case? That all factors in as well.
We always have the phrase, it depends, right?
It depends.
And it's kind of a cop out, right? Someone says, hey, what should I do? And you say, it depends. But you're not giving a clear answer. I like to take that depends and dissect it into, well, what is the clear prescriptive things you could do? And it's up to the customer to choose how they deploy their deployment. But getting that detail and being able to make that decision, I think, is the key thing for customers. And hopefully maybe we can get a little closer to that stuff today.
Nice. I'm just actually looking up some of your public documentation here, Matt. And one, it's pretty funny. I did a search for AWS security best practices, and it says, notice this white paper has been archived. And for the latest technical information on security and compliance, see this website.
No longer needed. We're that secure, where we've deprecated the security best practices white paper. What else? Do you want to share your screen? And maybe we can walk through it with everyone else watching. Or I can share my browser here. Either way, if you got it there.
You know what? You do it. I'm going to be lazy. Do you have the link?
Okay. I can find it.
Send it to you.
I'll
send it to you on our super secret way of communication.
Best practices. Oh yeah, I got the link. Okay. And actually, funnily enough, when you do a Google search, we're not the first. I think someone else is paying for some. let me bring this up here. Share my screen. I have a new laptop, and I swear I swap out my laptop every other week, but I bet it's going to ask me to reset if it does, or reconnect.
You have a new laptop?
Oh, always.
They like you.
Yeah, I can share a tab, but not a window. So let's just share that tab.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. All right, and I'll zoom out a little bit, see if we can get more on here. So this is the security best practices website. I actually did a search for AWS security best practices, and you'll notice, well, we have our AI overview, but yeah, we're not the top one. We have these folks here.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that. You can purchase it and get, I guess, security best
Actually,
practices.
wait, weren't they bought by Google or something recently?
I don't know.
I thought that.
Sometimes I feel like my head's in the dirt when it comes to these things.
Yeah, 32 billion acquisition. Wow, that's a lot of money. No wonder they're coming up first on the AWS security best practices. Anyhow.
Under Google.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we want this one, right? Is that it?
Yeah. I think you're right.
Okay. Oh, that's just bringing us to that site. Let's see what else we got. Okay, here's your white paper that was deprecated. Okay, so trying to find some. Okay, and we're at the architecture center, which I don't like that much. It's a little kludgy to navigate. Maybe we should talk to our marketing folks to fix that. Okay, so we've got here, search the AWS Architecture Center. And I think these are just our blogs, are they? Or let's do network.
Well, I'm not seeing, I don't know if you might have to reshare or something, because I just see AWS security best practices.
Oh, I see. Oh, because I broke out into a new tab because I can't share a screen. Let's go here. Okay, now you should be able to see it, correct?
Yeah, it makes a bit more sense now.
Okay. So this is the site I was looking at. And now going down to search the architecture center. This might be filtered on security right now. I'm not sure, but if I do a search, if I do network, check for single host network entries in a security group's ingress. Maybe. Imperva building real-time streaming data pipelines. Well, Imperva is a security vendor. And building a data pipeline would be network related. Customizing CloudWatch alerts for network firewall. Integrate, I like this one, integrating third-party services in the AWS cloud, but it's not really security related.
What's more partner? It's like from our past.
It sure is. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of guidance here, is there?
Yeah, especially on security, networking.
Oh, secure Amazon VPC outbound network traffic. This is the one
All right.
we want to look at.
That's the one you want?
Well, I mean, it seems like what we want to look at. Let's go PDF. And then I have to keep pasting this back in that same tab to
Right.
get. Okay, so now we've got our guide where we're like, okay, let's secure our
So the
VPC
first thing we should
outbound
do is figure out who wrote it to make sure they don't get mad at us when they watch this later.
Let's have a look. Oh, no, we don't put names on these anymore, I don't think.
Oh, no? Okay.
No, we used to have the names at the front or the back, but yeah, document history, initial. Yeah, see, we don't really, but this is pretty new. This actually might be a pretty good guide. Whoops, I just clicked on a link I didn't want to click on. I might paste this in a chat somewhere if I can find it. Over
Yeah,
here.
paste it in for everyone else.
If folks want to take that for the archives. Okay, so what I want to find here, business outcomes, I want to find a diagram. Let's critique. Is there a diagram? When using flow logs. Oh, come on. No diagram at all?
In a white paper of all things?
Yeah. Okay, well, so we need to make it a mission. If folks are interested in us doing this, here we go, to maybe work on some of this stuff here. Okay, let's have a look and see what we're dealing with here. Well,
so the first thing
this doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me because following diagram shows an example architecture for using network firewall to filter VPC's outbound traffic. So this is confusing to me now as a customer. I have my customer hat on right now.
Okay.
Outbound, but the first thing that I notice is a network load balancer. What's a network load balancer used for? Inbound.
Correct.
And so that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We were going from internet gateway. Can you folks see my cursor at all? Oh, yeah, you can. Okay.
Yeah,
so we go to an
see your cursor.
IGW. Okay.
Well, one
we
thing
hit
I
a
want to point
network load
out is very
balancer.
important. It's very, very
Yeah,
important.
please.
That I had a conversation with a customer earlier today on this, actually. And I asked them to watch the show. Hopefully they're there. Say hi if you are. But they were doing ingress firewalling, right? And I noticed right here, one of the things that I told them that is a good best practice is that if they're doing filtering on all traffic coming in, or even a portion of traffic coming in, ingress routing rules on the IGW is a great way to protect that VPC that has the IGW. Because one of the things that I ran into earlier, not earlier in this week, I guess, because this week isn't that long, but last week, I had a customer who had a security issue because they had a firewall, right? The firewall, and they went ahead and had all of the traffic that came in through the IGW go to their firewall. Everybody was happy and everything was fun. But they had an issue where they spun up an EC2 instance with an EIP, and it had internet access, and it literally opened a hole into their VPC. And no one broke in or anything, but this is just something that they figured out. And the best way to prevent against that is to put a route saying everything from the internet must go to your firewall. So I just want to throw it out there because I saw it right on top.
Yeah. No, and this is a feature we didn't have a few years ago, right? When you and I started on AWS. So here at the IGW, we can do internet gateway route table. That didn't exist a couple of years ago. We've got our destination 10.0.0.0/16 via local. So that is the VPC CIDR, which normally listed over here on the left. But oh wait, where is it? No, down here, not listed. That's okay. Maybe it's down the bottom. Nope. I love how we don't have standards with diagrams. I'd love to change that. Then
let's change it.
We've got Then we've got a 10.24.34.128/27 via network firewall endpoint AZA. And so I think what we're saying here is anything for the 10.0 just routed via the local, via the .1 in the subnets, and we'll talk about that. But anything inbound to these 2/27 ranges, we want to come in and hit one of these endpoints. And so I think what we're doing now, this diagram is very confusing because we should remove the network load balancer because that's for inbound. And if you've got an application that's serving traffic, you put a network load balancer and you come from the outside, you hit the network load balancer, CNAME, A records, and then targets, typical 3-tiered web app, etc. But in this case, we're actually starting down here. We're saying something down here. This is a bit of a mess, but worker nodes or something are coming up and hitting the firewall. And depending on the availability zone you're in, let's have a look at the route. We've got a 10.24.34.0/24 via local. Well, that's actually a typo. That should be /16 of the VPC CIDR, not the subnet range. Or is the
Unless the
VPC
worker node is part of the cluster. Could be part of the
no,
EKS
there's actually
cluster.
I'm being so critical here. Maybe I'm in a bad mood, but 10.0.0/16 is our VPC range.
Right.
The local route should be a 10.0.0/16. So when you have a subnet and a route table, it inherits the VPC range. So the VPC CIDR, and it routes everything for that VPC CIDR as a local, meaning anything inside the VPC can connect to anything else, bar security groups and NACLs. But then we've got a default route via NAT gateway AZA. So let's say worker node goes up to, I guess this is a representation of Kubernetes, but hits hits the NAT gateway, then the NAT gateway routes to the firewall endpoint, then the firewall endpoint goes to the internet because we've got this default route, and then the route back is whichever one of these two routes it is going via that firewall endpoint. So we've successfully built a service chain with network functions, be it a NAT gateway and a firewall, and we're in line for the worker node. So yeah, I guess this would work, except for the mistakes in the VPC CIDRs, which I think that would just be how it's displayed, not actually the configuration.
The other thing too I was thinking about is if you go back up to the top, when for the ingress rules, I would like to see representation of saying, okay, everything coming from start at star or whatever, anything coming from the internet, send to the interfaces of the ANF. I mean, I know they show that the routes there, but I would like to see that explicit route added. You know what I mean? Especially if you're doing a security paper and highlighting, like, you want to make sure that you're covering anything that's coming into 10.0.0/16, because that's representing your entire workload. You could add on a transit gateway to this. You could add on more VPCs, right? And hopefully you're staying within that CIDR range. And if this is your single point of ingress and you're filtering, and your single point of egress and you're filtering, should have all those pieces in. I do realize that this is a egress filter, not an ingress, but still, if you're going to show that representation.
Yes, it's an egress filter. Where is the title here? I lost it. Following diagram shows an example architecture using network firewall to filter VPC's outbound egress traffic using DNS host names. I missed the whole DNS host name piece. Oh, that's everything over here, maybe?
Yeah, it's got to be over there.
I don't know.
DNS just turns into IPs anyway, right?
That's right. I don't know where the DNS piece comes in. I'm being way too critical of this diagram, but I think a nice, simple, clean diagram showing the routing chaining of the NAT gateway and network firewall. And actually, I have a question. I don't know the answer to this one off the top of my head. Should it be NAT gateway then network firewall, or network firewall then NAT gateway?
I think it should be network firewall then NAT gateway.
That's what I'm thinking. Because
but here's one thing that's pretty interesting. If
Uh-huh.
you look at this diagram, I think this is to restrict via DNS where you can go in your VPC, right? So like if you want to filter out www.yahoo.com or www.competitor.com or whatever, you want to get rid of that. But I can tell you there's an easier way to do this. Route 53 firewall, or you can do resource gateway, and within the resource gateway, within your resource map, you just put in the FQDNs that you allow. That's it.
So I will say resource gateway, great solution, doesn't count for this diagram because this was made in 2022.
I know. Remember, we're the deal is we're saying, what can we do better now that we have new technology?
There's always better things. But
yeah.
The DNS firewall thing, when did that come out? I mean, I think that was available in 2022, right?
Yeah, I think that was.
So then maybe that would be a better option here. Anyway, anywho, let's keep going here. Interesting diagram, but I think it's overloaded. So that, wait, I don't know if we got a best practice out of that.
Let me send you this, Matt. Just so we can have completeness. Here's a doc on the using DNS firewall to filter outbound DNS traffic.
Okay. Do we have a date? Probably not.
No, but I know this is more recent, honestly. 2024, 2025.
Oh, we really need a diagram here. Using DNS firewall to filter outbound DNS traffic. This is great. This is fantastic. And actually, we should paste this. I can do it real quick. I got it in my.
Yeah, so I'm doing it too
board.
because my pasting is on a completely separate machine. So I'm being lazy.
Wait, what did I'm just looking at the chat here. Pete, what did you paste in the chat here? We've got security reference architecture. I might just open that one too. Oh, that's a good one. I
Also,
like that.
TechField has a questions for resource gateway. Is there a limit of how many DNS entries we could add? Very good point. Yes, there is. I think it's 100 at this point. 100 resources that you can add to a resource group. So that is a very good point. You're going to be very, very restricted down to using the resource gateway. But remember, in this regard, I would do that in a situation, say, for instance, if you have, like we showed EKS, and let's say you're running it yourself and you're not using managed EKS from AWS and you want to download from Red Hat, say if you're running on Red Hat or Ubuntu or Gentoo. I know I just dated myself saying Gentoo, but any of those Linux flavors or Windows, right? And you want to restrict internet access for that VPC to only be able to download patches and security and nothing else. Resource gateway is really, really easy, super easy to do that. Because then you just create your resource, add in the web pages that you want to have them be able to get to, right? You'll still need NAT gateway because NAT gateway is going to do that translation for you to get out into the internet. And basically you would point it to an endpoint from resource gateway, a private link endpoint. So then the way that would look is that you have your originating traffic, right? Your originating traffic goes through a NAT gateway, points to the endpoint, and then goes out to the internet. Because remember that, or points to the endpoint goes through a NAT gateway is what I should say, because the NAT gateway, the endpoint is the local IP address. So for completeness, start from your servers, goes to the endpoint, resolves the sites, right, of where you can go through the resource config, goes through the NAT gateway and gets there and comes back. And then you can do that with the rules enhancements, right? So you can even do, was it more enhanced routing, and you can force all the traffic only to do that for 0.0.0 or put it on the IGW. You do all sorts of crazy stuff that way. But the key components is the resource gateway, the resource group, the sites that you only want, and know that you're not going to go anywhere else.
I have a question.
Sure.
From this, are we landing on it depends, here's some options, or are we landing on a best practice? And if a best practice, what would the best practice be?
I honestly would say, if my feet are being held to the fire for DNS filtering, egress firewall rules, I would use the Route 53 DNS firewall if you're using Route 53. Okay. The main reason is the more components that you're going to add along the way, those are all your points of failure, or all the pieces that you have to maintain. If we're going to do it all for you, it's better just to do it that way. That whole thing we just talked about, right, the security layering. If we've got all this piece solid, we're going to keep the DNS firewall, all the fleet, everything we have running Route 53, all the way, all up to date, always going to be audited. It's always going to be, checked and make sure. I mean, everybody in the internet's probably hitting this. We have to make sure it's rock solid. The question you'd have to ask yourself is, are you going to do the same type of effort for the rest of the workload to do what we showed before and maintain all those other pieces like we do for Route 53?
Right. And I mean, I like the fact that DNS in this case isn't in the packet path, and so you're not paying. I don't know how much NAT gateway costs or network firewall costs together. I think we do some kind of cost offset, but you're paying for every packet that's going through that infra. What if someone were to say, okay, DNS firewall is filtering outbound DNS traffic, like the link we have here. Can someone just connect to an IP then? Can they say, oh, well, I'm going to connect to 54.10.5.2 and that's my data exfiltration thing and send traffic to it? I mean, you wouldn't really do that from I think it's meant for a different purpose. Maybe folks in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, where it would be, you don't want people to go to Amazon.com. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, because Amazon.com is amazing. But if someone were to take the IP of a DNS of an endpoint that's resolved already and then punch in the 10.2.5.7, would it work? Whereas I think when you have a firewall in line, I agree, it costs more money. You've got a point of failure. You've got multiple hops you're going through. There's increased latency. But now you can actually, on all traffic, say, hey, don't go to these destinations. You can apply some policy around it. I think maybe that's why people would gravitate towards a network firewall versus DNS filter. But I think the DNS thing is probably the first port of call, right? That's that's probably what you want to do first. Okay, lost my train of thought, but there was a really cool link that Pete pasted in here, and also in the chat.
Here's one question from Pete.
Comment I liked earlier.
You can add whatever URL you want to the Route 53 DNS firewall. Yeah. So basically, what you do is just for completeness of this, you basically create a domain list, right? And then the list of the places that you want to allow or deny, and then you basically create a rule group, and then from there you associate the rule group with different VPCs, and then you go ahead and you do your whole monitoring, fine tuning, making sure you're not blocking what you shouldn't or shouldn't block. But you do have control over what you want to have in or out with Route 53. It's not just something to manage things only for AWS. We would, if AWS is doing that, which we do, like when we're doing things with Shield and Shield Advanced, right? We do a lot of that type of stuff, Pete, under the hood, but we don't expose it because there's no reason to. We don't tell you that, hey, we have a list of known bad actors and we're blocking these bad actors, and then here's a list of everything that we're doing constantly up to date. We just inherit that for us. Anything that we offer with our managed services, like configuring, using outbound filtering, all that stuff, will have a configurable needed by you, right? So either we will say, here's a service and a feature you can use that will secure you down, or this is what we're doing for you. But we won't put both of those in the same statement. So, because again, we have to keep that separation. Right?
Could I jump on an EC2 instance and just change the DNS resolver and just say, hey, I want to use...
Yeah, you can. But if you're using, I've done this before in the past and it drove me crazy. So if you go into like a Linux box and change the resolve.conf, it'll eventually change itself back. But you're absolutely correct. Like in a one-time instance, if you want to go and set up a rogue DNS and use 8.8.8.8, which I think is the Google DNS, to resolve outside of your organization, yeah, you could do that if 8.8.8.8 is allowed to be filtered out.
I think 8.8.8.8 or Quad 8, I guess we could say.
Quad 8, yeah.
They respond to pings, which I always thought was interesting. I wonder how much ICMP packets those folks are getting hit by every single day.
Well, think about it. People used to use that all the time. I used to use it for Keep Alive. Like, am I on the internet? Ping 8, Quad 8, as you say. And if it comes back, yeah, I am. Or Yahoo used to be the other one.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the Telstra resolvers that we used to manage. I think it was 130, 139 dot something. But yeah, that was the Australian equivalent. Anyway, let's move on to, if I can find the right, I have 1,000 different tabs open now. Oh, here it is. This is the link that Pete pasted in here. The AWS Security Reference Architecture, not just an AWS Security Reference Architecture, the AWS Security Reference Architecture. Let's make this a little bigger here. We'll zoom out. So what do we got here? We've got an organization. We've got an AWS artifact. I don't know enough.
So this looks like organization. So the OU, security, infrastructure, all that stuff. So what they're doing is they're basically making organizational units for each piece, right? So security has its organizational units.
Let's can I zoom out? Funny, when I press plus, it makes the diagram bigger.
Yeah, it's all fractal.
Love that. Here we go. Okay, I think that's too small for you folks, but let's just have a 30,000 foot view. Yeah, so this is all around organizations. Notice there's a VPC, and we've got a load balancer, and we've got Aurora.
So that's our organizational units for workloads. Yeah.
Okay.
So what they're basically doing is they're using organization. They're setting up security rules, right? OUs for organizational units. Probably using SCPs, right? Security control process.
Okay, so it says here it's built around a simple 3-tiered web architecture that can fit on a single page.
If you shrink it.
I have a small page, I guess.
You do.
It's good. I like this, actually. This kind of ties all those pieces together. This is good. But then really the nuts and bolts of the architecture are not really what's happening up here from a networking perspective. It's really, well, we've got a network firewall down here. We've got an inspection VPC. Okay, cool.
Right.
But I'm seeing this down here. This VPC is really where we've got the load balancer and we've got our EC2 instances, which are targets. And they're running in one subnet, which is, so it's a single AZ deployment. That's fine. And we probably did that for simplicity. And then we've got our database. So here's our 2 tiers. And I suppose maybe the EC2 instances could be offering the first and second tier. But then what's interesting is we're not showing what the networking path. See, this is where networking and security folks need to work together. As a networking person, I always think of flows and how a packet
Right.
traverses through the deployment. Whereas here, they're thinking of function. They're thinking of, we need the function of an inbound VPC. And it might include some NAT. Okay. An outbound VPC with some NAT and some proxy servers. Like, these are the functions themselves. But if we were to build this as a flow, or to show the flow, it would be a far different diagram. It would actually have these folks connected through to this. Well, this would be a single VPC with an IGW, and then you would potentially do an outbound path through a transit gateway, maybe up into a centralized inspection VPC or something like that. So kind of what we were drawing last week in that chicken scratch.
Right.
Interesting though.
Yeah, and they're looking at the security through the lens of organizations, obviously. And the thing that I find interesting is they didn't show, or maybe they did in somewhere else in the document, what the security controls are for each of the organizational units, what they can and cannot do.
Right.
But that's generally more on an access type. Like, you would set up an IAM policy, right? And then within that policy, you define a bunch of resources, and then define a bunch of resources or roles, that can access those resources. So that's a lot of nesting of security groups and security profiles. So, yeah.
I just clicked on the.
Wuvo,
oh, we got a question.
Mention.
Yeah.
I just asked the diagramming. Usually, folks will use either OmniGraffle, as I put in the chat. I have seen people use PowerPoint as well, and Lucidchart, but typically for documents, I've seen a lot of OmniGraffle for that. They were just
speaking my language now, Jamie. You know that I am.
Yeah. I mean, same here. I mean, you and I have.
They might as well pay me. They don't, but I tell everyone to use OmniGraffle. Yeah, if OmniGraffle is listening, or the Graffle, whatever the company, the Omni Group, I think they call. If they're listening, please make a PC version of OmniGraffle, because every time I use OmniGraffle within our little community of Mac users, everything's hunky dory. But when I share one of these files to a PC user, they go, "What in the world is this?"
Can you make this a PDF?
I just go back to PowerPoint at that point and then give up. Or actually Draw.io, or what's the other one? Not Inkscape.
Lucidchart.
Lucidchart. Lucidchart's good. Okay, let's go back here. So I clicked on. I'm here in prescriptive guidance. I love that, by the way. I love that we give customers prescriptive guidance. Let's see if we actually do. Then we click on this one. It actually opens up a new tab. So let's just paste it back in my tab I'm sharing. So, okay. Oh, we have some names here. That's good. Okay. Document history. We'll maybe check that out. So what are we doing here? It's common to interact with third-party providers and integrate third-party services for specific functionalities. I'm a little confused, but
I have a question. While you're figuring that out, Tech first has a question. For VPC flow logs and other logs for hundreds of member accounts, do you recommend sending it all to one account and region? If yes, will there be any transfer charges? So one of the things that I recommend, unless of course you want to start off, Matt, you have a recommendation?
No, please. Yeah, flow logs is not my area of expertise. I like them, but I don't use them. And I'll tell you why.
Stick them
go first.
Yeah, stick them all into a local S3 buckets, right? And then what you want to do ultimately is you want to get your S3 buckets. Now, this really depends on how your InfoSec team is, right? But I can give you examples when I'm working with customers, like for FinServ or for governments. And generally what they do, for quicker, easier, safer way of consuming, you can do, for a lot of our services, going through CloudWatch, you can attach a fire hose to a stream and send it to an S3 bucket. And then those S3 buckets, you want to consolidate it somewhere, right, to a place. And the reason why you want to consolidate that S3 bucket is if you have a SIM, which most of us generally, are using some sort of security tool for management. If you have all the logs in one place, right, you can time on timestamps and different keys and kind of figure out what's going on, not just with only the network, but let's say if you have a problem getting access to, say, I don't know, a web server, just make it very, very easy, like an Nginx web server behind an ALB, right? The ALB access logs are sent to the S3 bucket. You want to send the applications logs, you can do that as well from the app, send it to the S3 bucket. Like anything with logging, send it to a single spot and look at it like a logging data lake. Now, the reason why I bring up InfoSec is if you want to go that extra step or that extra mile, I know that there's a requirement, especially for some government, healthcare, and FinServ places, to have a set of logs that are just not touchable. You can do something with a copy of those logs, but they want the original copy. So with S3, which is great, is you can actually set up bucket policies, and you can have your bucket that you consolidate all these logs, basically copy or migrate these logs to another bucket for InfoSec only, which only InfoSec has access to, right? Yeah, control tower logging account is another is a good way of doing it. I usually am working with folks that didn't start with control tower. So I would say that generally our norm of folks who come to the cloud don't have that. But if you do, that's a great way to kind of do the click, 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 next, 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 and help it set up. They did a good job of building that framework. But yeah, that's what I would recommend we do for the flow logs.
I was just trying to find a recommendation here on logging, and lo and behold, there is a this one here: security, identity, and compliance logging and monitoring guide for application owners. Okay, and if we go down here on the left-hand side, CloudTrail, CloudWatch logs, VPC flow logs, excellent. You can create a flow log or virtual. I think this is just more an overview of flow logs. I'm not really seeing
Of what it can do.
Yeah, and
So
this is touted as AWS service for logging and monitoring, and it's best practices. I thought I saw best practices somewhere here, but
yeah.
go, Tim.
So one thing too, I just want to kind of warn: flow logs can get expensive, right? Because they're logging constantly, and they're also not
Yeah.
just in time. They're what, 5 minutes, Matt? Is it, or is it 2 minutes? I think it's 2 minutes now.
No, I think it's 5. You can do detailed logging. We can check the time, but
Yeah. So
it's not immediate.
meaning that it's not just in time. It's up to 5 minutes after it happened, right? So that can cause a little bit of a delay or a timing delay of trying to figure out. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Pete. Pete brings up a good point. Data lifecycle policies, where you do the infrequent access and Glacier and stuff on, depending on when the logs are accessed, will help out immensely with data storage. But just keep in mind too that if you are operating a site like some of our friends at Netflix, right, and they turned on flow logs, like that just fills up fast because there's tons of people. So you have to kind of have a good handling on what your traffic and the amount of traffic that you have, and what your cost and budgets. But yeah, I digress.
I would like
But yeah, flow
NetFlow
logs can get expensive.
or
You don't
JFlow.
want to. I mean, what some people will do, because they're not just in time, is they'll actually have an event that will kick off, and they turn on flow logs based on a CloudWatch alarm. So they'll notice something going on, right? Or you'll notice that there's a weird pattern that happens specifically at a certain time during the day. So you can turn it on, turn it off, and then analyze your logs at any time that you want to. And again, if you have your logging, not just your flow logs, but everything going to the same bucket, you can go ahead and key in on that one timestamp and figure out what's going on a lot easier. The hardest part of troubleshooting, the hardest part of figuring out what's going on, is just getting your hands on all the data, like making sure it's all in the same spot. Like, imagine, my analogy for this would be, if you're working on a car, like back in the day, I didn't have enough money. When I was a young kid, I would fix up my own cars. And I remember I was under my wife's Subaru, and I'm changing out, we would remove the engine and we're working on the transmission. And every time I reach my hand out, I want to grab a tool, right? And I want to grab the right tool. And I don't want to have to squeeze out and squeeze back in, because that takes a lot of time. And, so if I'm crawling out from the car, looking through my toolbox for the right tool and coming back, versus just having them laid out. I used to do that. I used to just lay out all the tools I want all around the car, so I can just grab it at any time. Then I can react quickly. And if you're in a situation where you're being attacked, or if your website is down, that pressure is high, right? So you want all your tools just laying all around the outside of it. Anyway.
Oh, I hear you. And then you're driving down the road and you hear this clunk, and it was the the spanner that you left on the engine bay that fell down.
That's not good. That's not
there goes $30, or however much you paid, depending on what brand it is.
David's got a question for you. David R7777. Any advice for managing network fire manager rules at scale?
Oof.
The syntax using CFN is not.
Do you know the answer to this one?
I got to be honest with you. No, network fire manager is not really the thing that I've used much. And it's not that it's not a great product. It's just that I tend to play in the app networking world, which is a little bit more. I find that AWS Network Firewall or AWS Firewall Manager tends to deal with the periphery a lot, and a lot of times I have to deal through everything straight through. So I'd love to give you some recommendations on making that easier. Honestly, I would say, CFN is the way that I would do it. Usually either that way, or I would do something with uh, any type of, again, CloudWatch alerting and Lambdas if you have known patterns to manage those things for you. But yeah, infrastructure code right now, CFN is probably the best way to do it, or Terraform, or whatever is your best.
This leads me to a question I got from a customer yesterday, actually. It was, hey, I want to deploy 1,000 applications, and we're going to deploy in one or a group of shared VPCs. And we would like to do subnet-based segmentation and use security groups to limit access so we can control what applications can and can't talk to. What's the best way to manage security groups? And in the back of my mind, and I don't know enough about Network Firewall Manager, I'm learning here that you can do managed lists and some other things. But what about security group management? Is Network Firewall Manager the best place for that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe
That
someone
is a good question.
in the chat can answer it for us. You have a very loud keyboard, Jamie.
I do. Just to kind of show, it's a mechanical keyboard. It's the only way I type.
Yeah,
You
well,
should see the keyboard of my
switched
Apple.
to, I think I was using like a MX Blue switches or something. I changed a keyboard that has, I think they're cherry red or something. And so now they don't make the click noise, but they still give you that kind of mechanically keyboard feel.
I like the click noise.
not
It's
quite
part
as
of my
good.
security, right? So people can hear me typing down here and they know not to come down. See, security best practice, make noise. Any motorcyclist
guy on
will
the
tell you
roof.
they want their motorcycle to make some noise. I do the same thing with a keyboard.
Right. I was just thinking the guy who's on the roof with the hammer banging, so his wife thinks he's working, but he's sitting up there drinking a beer. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Anyway, let's move on. We're about 42 minutes past the hour. Where should we take this discussion now? We kind of went on a sideways discussion around flow logs. I said a comment earlier, and I don't think you heard me, but I would like NetFlow. I want NetFlow sampled packet rates from a EC2 instance sent to a NetFlow collector or something on a per second basis, coupled with SNMP polling stats. You've heard me talk about this before, but it doesn't exist. But it would be amazing.
Man, if we could do an SNMP walk on a bunch of our stuff, wouldn't that be wild?
Now we're talking. You're talking my language. Okay. What else we got?
So we got
here?
another question from David R. Actually,
yeah.
There's another one. The issue we have with security groups in a microservices architecture is all the circular dependencies to allow inbound rules. It's really messy when you want to deploy an app in isolation. I totally agree, David, and I cannot stress enough that if you're in a microservices architecture and you're using security groups, which is a periphery network infrastructure means of locking things down, you're making your life a little bit harder for yourself, right? Because you're basically trying to put guardrails on on railroad tracks. And I know that somebody might be telling you this is what you have to do, and this is the main way to do it. But realistically, David, what I would recommend taking a look at is something that you can use like VPC Lattice. You've heard that a lot on this show. Especially with microservices, you can turn them into individual services. Then you can build a role and a policy around them, right? And then organically, if you add a new app, all you have to do is go to whatever services that are already existing, if that app interacts with them, and just give them access on it, right down even to the granular of this type of get or put or a method action, or you can do filtering right on, like it has to have this token or this in the header, right? So when you're doing microservices and trying to get your hands wrapped around all of that, it's kind of like grabbing a ball of flies. So you can't go after each individual fly and put a jacket on every single one. You have to control the room. And the best way to control the room in that regards is to basically control the control plane and the data plane. And that's the exact reason why we made Lattice. So I would look at that. And Lattice does both TCP as well as HTTPS. So trust me, your life will get a lot easier doing something like that as opposed to trying to do the security group route. It can be done. You just won't like yourself at the end of that journey.
I was I think I'm using the wrong word, but I was about to say you have a lot of euphemisms today, but I think that's not a correct word.
No, analogies. I'm doing analogies. Euphemisms is if I'm as mean as you are.
Not mean. I'm just tired. I need more coffee, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, you are in
I
the West
was, I am a little snarky today, actually. I'm channeling my inner Corey Quinn. If you folks subscribe to Corey, he has a lot of snark. That's his brand. Great
Yes.
emails that he sends out. Security group.
Cougar.
I'm
What is a
I'm
cougar?
getting a couple of things here, but not much. Security group management, I get nothing.
Hmm.
So when it comes to, hey,
You
I
know,
want to do security group management in the
here's the thing
AWS
about that.
Architecture
Once you
Center.
You used to do this a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, back when I first joined, I remember seeing you on stage, Matt, a long time ago with Nick Matthews, and you were banging the drum on being efficient with security groups and security group nesting and referencing. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I think that
Because
was
it
actually
should
Nick
be
that was
there.
doing that.
Was it Nick?
Yeah. So for the folks who don't know, Nick Matthews is another SA. He actually is more security focused than I am. He works in Kuiper now, though. So I was always more networking focused. He was security focused. So he is the guy to talk about that.
I mean,
Yeah,
I could
okay.
guess I could explain it, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. If you want to dig into
Sure.
that, I'm going to see if I can
So
find
there's a
some
limit
other
to the
stuff
number
here.
of security groups that you can have. And it's quite large, right? And some of the large organizations will reach that. But the problem that comes down that we've seen in the chat and some folks have mentioned is it can get unwieldy, right? Because we have a security group on literally everything that has an IP, more or less inside of VPC and even on the VPC itself, it can get really overwhelming. So what we do is we have this concept of security group referencing. And when we added security groups even to the network load balancer, which I think was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it heavily relies on the concept of referencing as well. So yeah, over 1,000. Absolutely, Pete, you're absolutely correct. When you start, doubling down on security groups, and those are not the be all end all. If you want the advanced functions, you definitely should be looking at firewalls. But in general, the way I would look at it is if you want to have a very secure workload and you have the concept of lots and lots of security groups, I would try to boil them down to more macro type rules of what you want to allow in. Remember, they're stateful. What you want to allow in, of course, it'll be able to go back out and talk. And then when you want to get a bit more restrictive beyond that macro policy of those security groups, even referencing those groups of other ones, so you can stack, say, a bunch of rules, name it a group, and then put that one group as a single rule of another security group in line. You want to create a hierarchy, almost like if you're a programmer, like a library of objects, right? And name those security groups appropriately. And then when you set up your security group referencing, your life will be a lot easier. Once you get to the point where you need to get more granular on your security, that's when you're looking at things like, okay, if I'm microservices, like what David was looking at, right? Now we're going to look at the appropriate things to tie that down. Microservice tie downs, as I mentioned, VPC Lattice is a great one. API Gateway is another one. It has WAF built in. ALB is another great one. It has WAF built in as well. And they can also point to Lambdas and point to Kubernetes and containers. So you want to, the next layer piece, the outside of the infrastructural macro piece, would be more on the services that are connecting and operating the control and data plane of your microservices, right? Even if you're just doing, Kubernetes, let's say you manage Kubernetes or you're just doing EC2 instances. Now you're starting to look at, okay, I've got a bunch of flows coming in. I need to start looking at those flows not as an individual network path, but as a whole. You start looking at firewalls, ANF, Palo Alto, gateway load balancer, and then you're going to be redirecting your traffic, as Matt and I were saying about, your ingress rules and your even more specific routing, all of that. I know that was a little bit long-winded, but I just want to
No,
make sure
I
that
think
pick the right tool for the right.
I think that's all good advice. I was just looking here. I was distracting everyone while you were talking, so I had to stop. But I was just looking at the where is the title? Simplifying Amazon VPC Security Groups Management with VPC Associations and Security Group Sharing. I think this is great in concept, but then I had to start digging into what this actually means and what I'm actually doing, and I got a little lost too. It's a repeating theme today. I seem to be getting lost pretty easily, but man, this is a read and a half.
It's time to roll up your sleeves and let's pound on some folks. I've got a question from Tech first. One more question on
Yeah,
security
let's
groups.
have it.
Does connection tracking part of the security group or the EC2 instance? So is connection tracking part of the security group or the EC2 instance when it comes to security groups?
Well, I don't know a lot about contract, but it's basically built into or a limitation as part of the Nitro system. And so when we think about connections, and we think about IPs associated with an EC2 instance, when we think about security groups, when we think about NACLs, all of those things are consuming memory on the actual physical network adapter itself. But think of it like a smart NIC. It's a network card that has some CPU, 16 cores, maybe depending on versions, multiple threads, memory. It's got a pipeline of traffic that follows different processes and hardware components on the actual network adapter itself. But the memory is consumed by these things. And so I think contract is one of those things that's actually consumed by that. And actually, I think we can maybe bring up, let's see if we can find it here, AWS ETH tool, where you've clicked on that link before, you can monitor the utilization on an EC2 instance. So things like, where are the actual stats here? So bandwidth in allowance exceeded, or contract allowance exceeded. So the number of packets dropped because connection tracking exceeded the maximum for the instance, and the new connections could not be established. So if you have a lot of connections coming to an EC2 instance, that would be how you actually report on that. So you can, on the console of the instance, run ETH tool, get those stats. We have customers that will run a Prometheus agent, for example, and then monitor through ETH tool. Then Prometheus agent pushes that data to Grafana or something. Now you've got a network operations dashboard, which I love, where you could actually see these statistics or utilization metrics for a particular EC2 instance. So that would be how you would look at that. But yes, they're all related. And what year was this?
Does this say?
Good question. This is our public.
Because here's the thing: is contracting is also tracked for EC2 instances in CloudWatch, and it was released, I think, a year and a half ago. And the whole reason why I know that is that we had, when I was working with a couple of our customers, they had an issue where they wanted to be able to register and deregister targets to a network load balancer based on the number of connections on their targets. So we wrote a blog about it, and it has a Lambda and it's a solution. So what we do is, because of the fact that if you deregister a instance from an NLB and you have existing connections, those connections won't terminate. They'll continue, right? So you can deregister and re-register all day long. And you can play that game of like, okay, I have this many connections on my EC2 instance, dereg, right? Let them kind of go down, re-reg, and then get more. So that's how I know.
I think the blog you're talking about is this here, and actually it's the same metric. It's we can push that metric through CloudWatch, or you can hit that metric using ETH tool, depending on what you want to do. CloudWatch is obviously going to be there'll be a cost associated with it, and it'll be a little slower.
And ETH tool, to be fair, doing things as close as possible to the application is going to save you a bit, right? You have a quicker response time.
Yeah,
I could do another analogy.
Right. No, let's hear it.
No, I'm just kidding.
What? Come on, I'm all about the analogies.
Make it compelling. it's like the here you go. Here's an analogy. The analogy would be is like, okay, you have to go across the street to get a tool, or you just have to reach in the passenger seat. How's that? Just working on the.
That's true. Well, I mean,
right?
There's
because you're in the car, in the app. It's the tools in the app. You just work on it.
I'll expand on that analogy. You're sitting in the car trying to take the radio out or something. That sounds odd. I don't even have radios in cars anymore, but whatever. You're trying to take the radio out, and you have I don't know what you guys call a spanner over here, a wrench or something.
Spanner.
A spanner. You have a spanner, and it's just a little bit too big, but it's kind of working and it's kind of slipping. You got to be careful because it might thread the bolt you're trying to undo. Or you can get out of the car and go walk across to the workshop and get the right tool and come back and do it properly. I feel like that's. Does that work here?
Or you can use a dime in your pocket and put it in the wedge and then shoot.
Or if you walk around with a multi-tool. I love multi-tools. I normally carry things around. So this is what the metric looks like. But funnily enough, actually, that metric is here. They're using ETH tool as the example to show what the contract allowance exceeded looks like. And then in CloudWatch, it would look something like this. I love graphs like this. I would love to have a per second graph for things like this, but they're a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes or something, I think. We've only got 6 minutes left, Jamie, and I feel like we haven't got into any best practices here. We've done some hand waving again. This is a good blog.
Well, we did say the best practice for DNS. So if you're doing DNS filtering, like FQDN filtering, DNS firewall, so that one's good. Another best practice that we mentioned was if you're doing any type of microservices security, don't rely on peripheral Don't only rely on your peripheral like security groups and firewalls to lock that down. Look at a service like VPC Lattice or even ALB or API Gateway. So take advantage of those things. And I guess the one good takeaway too, with 5 minutes left, is don't go at it alone. Right? If you have a question or if you have something you want to bring up, how do I best lock this down or lock that down? We have a whole group of security folks as well as networking folks that can help you out with this. So ask your account team, ask your SA. You know, what do you guys think about this? I've seen that before, and I've been involved in a couple of calls where a customer comes and says, "Look, what do you think of this?" Yeah, exactly, Pete. The only dumb question is an unasked one. And what do you think of this? We just built this. This is great. This is completely locked down. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if you SSH to this one host, I can build a reverse tunnel, and then, I gain access. And the call was like very quiet, and they're like, "How come we didn't lock that down?" It's like, well, you just ask your SAs,
So I've just pulled up the VPC Lattice Modernize and Simplify Your Enterprise Network Architectures by Alex and Ankit. I think this is a pretty good blog to get started on VPC Lattice. But to critique, I've got a lot of nits here today. It takes me down to about a third of the way before we see a diagram. I love diagrams, and I wish they would be the first thing you see. Here's what it looks like visually. This is actually a cool diagram. I like this. Kind of shows that VPC Lattice is the network for all of the things that you want to talk to each other. Right?
Would they? Yeah, there's no peering there. There's no.
You don't need Transit Gateway. Would you use Transit Gateway alongside Lattice, or just use Lattice?
Absolutely,
probably both.
100%. Especially if you want on-prem hybrid architectures going to other clouds, Transit Gateway is almost a must because it centralizes a lot of that external communication to your workloads. So 100%. It's not a versus. It's a when does it get applied?
It's an and, not an or.
And not an or. How is traffic enforced to only go through Lattice? Well, that is a Lattice session, and we have 3 minutes left, but I'll try to be very, very, very fast. When you connect something to VPC Lattice and you enable a VPC as a consumer of Lattice, whenever a Lattice service is recognized through an FQDN or an IP address through a resource gateway, it'll immediately go through what we call an unnumbered ENI, which is actually a 169 ENI. And it sends all of the traffic just like we do for, let's say, a gateway endpoint for S3. It'll capture that traffic, send it there. Once it goes there, it gets onto the control plane and data plane of Lattice. So that's how that's done.
I love how you say, we don't have any time, but I'm going to answer anyway.
I'm going to answer as fast as I can anyway.
There's a good point by Pete, actually. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Pete, you had some good stuff today as well. So the routingloop.net, this is where we post all of our past sessions and what the upcoming episodes will be. So upcoming, this is us here, 30th of July, rapid security deployment, hands-on look at AWS WAF's new interface. Cool. All right, that sounds pretty good. So we've got a whole bunch of networking stuff, security stuff right now. Past episodes, I think we lost a bunch here, right? But there's still a lot here.
Yeah, we did, sadly. There was a purge.
We had to go way back. Actually, this would be a good one. App networking, intro to Amazon VPC Lattice. So you can watch our previous session here. Actually, I was hosting that one. I totally forgot about that. And Tom was talking about VPC Lattice. So that's a pretty cool session. Maybe check that one out. I'll post this link in the chat as well. Just so you don't have to
put it in there as well.
Oh, you did already? Okay.
Yeah. And also, B. Carson Rose has a question. Trying to learn AWS for data science, building analytics workflows, or training ML models. What are some of the network security best practices I should keep data safe in services like S3 or SageMaker? Very, very quickly on S3, bucket policies. Very, very important. Right. I can't.
I love how you did that in 3 seconds. I was going to say you have 5 seconds. Go.
Yeah. So bucket policies.
We should do a session on that. Actually, that's a great topic. Well, we're out of time, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We love the engagement.
Yes.
Yeah, I think nitpicking public AWS documentation. Let's do more sessions like that. I love that. But also going back and trying to fix some of this stuff too. I think we'd love to have more diagrams, more clear prescriptive guidance, more best practices around networking security. Great session though. Good to chat with you, Jamie.
Last thing for me, I think, guys, let me know in the chat too. We should also do a session where we have a topic and then we let the audience just tell us what they want to know.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you guys think of that? You give us architectures, or you give us your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's our time.
bring your architecture to the routing loop day. That sounds
Yeah,
amazing. Let's do that.
we should do that.
All right, we'll see you
All right.
all next time. Thanks, everyone.
See you all next week. Thanks, guys.